What defines a woman in the Year of a Witching? So this book is by Alexis Henderson, and I read this book on a whim. One of my Bookstagram friends asked me to do a buddy read. She gave me a list of her TBR for the season, and I picked this one going in completely blind, unaware of what I was doing, but I was like, there's a witch. It's gonna be great. This book deals with a lot of things, but it really hinges on how women were treated by the church and society throughout history. Our main character, Emmanuelle, she is a young girl who is shunned for the choices that her parents made. And then unfortunately, she is then held accountable for them, even though she didn't do any of them. They are considered huge sinners to the point that her father was killed on a prior and her mom died in birth but was shunned in society. She vows herself to the church and to the Father, which is what they refer to as God in this book, but she finds herself being more drawn to the Mother, which is considered the Dark Mother. I guess it would be Eve in this book. The way that the story is written is that, I don't know if this is based in any religion, the book is considered fantasy, but in the Dark Mother, she is what I'm interpreting as Eve. She is seen as the temptress, the seductress, the ate the apple off the tree, the serpent convinced her, women were seen as weak. And so she fled to the forest, which is sort of the forest area outside of Bethel, which is the town that this takes place in. And Emmanuelle finds herself being called to it, so much to the point that she kind of likes that she's being called to it, and it really makes her question if she's good or if she's evil. There is a quote in this book that really stuck out to me. Well, there was quite a few, but for what I particularly want to explain about this book, these are the two I'm going to focus on. And the first one is, isn't it strange how reading a book is a sin, but locking a girl in the stocks and leaving her to the dogs is another of the good Father's work? So that is actually said by the prophet's son, his heir. And in this book, the prophet is essentially the leader of the town. He's the religious figure, and he marries as many brides as he wants to have more children to spread across the land for the father until he dies. So it's very interesting that his son, who is an heir, says this quote, and he's essentially calling out what his lineage has done for years. I also love this quote because it points out how back-asswards society is. Casting the first stone, literally throwing the women to the dogs, chained up and beating them, but calling it deliverance, just so women couldn't think for themselves. It's like they were afraid of us. It's like they knew that we could be good rulers and they didn't want us to have that power and potentially take it away from them. And instead, like I said earlier, kind of how they framed the Dark Mother, they framed women as the temptresses, the sinners, weak. It's so funny because the prophet in this book kind of falls to all those things that he says women are. And he calls his lust for power a burden that he has to bear for the Father in order to protect his entire flock for the greater good, and that sins are necessary, again, to protect the flock. But he doesn't have to burn on a prior. This book makes you angry in so many ways. Like I said, how back-assward it all is, and because there's some awful things that the prophet does, like awful, that I won't tell you because you need to read this book and experience it for yourself. And then the second quote that I want to discuss, the forest is sentient in a way man is not. She sees with 1,000 eyes and forgets nothing. This second quote, it really gives a foreshadowing to the things Emmanuelle will start to realize about herself. It's a very coming of age story, along with her understanding society around her and how essentially both sides are wrong. How the men of religion have been controlling it, and then how the witches of the dark forest run by the Dark Mother have been handling it. And that revenge and punishment are not the ways to be doing it. So if you were getting, like any of my guy watchers, if you were getting riled up going, this is just hating on men, I promised you this book, it reads between the lines. It really gets in there about how both sides are wrong. And because both sides are wrong, Emmanuelle is trying to understand how to bring everyone together, because she cares about her people, even though they judge her for who her parents were and the things that they did and where her father came from. Oh, there's so much I want to say, but I can't because I want you to read it. It really digs deep into these themes. Like I said, I walked into this book completely unaware of what I was going to read, and I found myself falling so hard for the characters that I was like, maybe should I be suspicious of them? I didn't know if I could trust them, but I kept falling for them and I kept wanting to read and read. Again, I did it as a buddy read, but me and my friend, we were just like, okay, you're done, you finished, we discussed, and we're like, okay, let's move on to the next part. Like we had to know what was happening. And it took turns in ways that I didn't expect, but in a good way because it surprised me so much. Alexis Henderson, she writes with such a swift pen. It felt incredibly easy to read this book. And it felt so easy to digest it, but yet it tore, you guys, it tore at my heart in ways that I didn't think possible, especially with this story. I did not know where it was going. Even in the moments that a little bit slower, but they were intimate, I still felt like the pace was there. And again, I was just gobbling up every word that Alexis wrote. I won't say much more because I feel like horror stories are mysteries. Any horror film you watch, you are trying to understand what is causing things, who did it, where did it come from, how do we solve it, all those things. And that's all answered at the end of this book. And I will say that because I loved it so much, guys, I spent so much money on this book. So first it was an Audible buy, but I had jet lag and my brain could not like digest it. So I bought the ebook on Kindle to read it, but then I loved it so much. I was like, I need to have it on my shelf. I got the hardcover because it's so pretty. Like I'll zoom in, but there's blood right here, which I couldn't see on my ebook because I have a black and white Kindle. It doesn't say when it takes place, but it definitely feels like it takes place clearly somewhere in between, starting from the 1400s, whenever the witch hunts ended, because it has a very like colonial small town. Like I said, it does take place in Bethel, which Bethel is apparently an ancient city of Palestine, located just north of Jerusalem, and I originally called Luz and in modern times Beitin. Bethel was important in the Old Testament times and was frequently associated with Abraham and Jacob. There, I guess it's considered like an ancient city. I don't know if it's actually real or it's just based in the Bible. I feel really uneducated not knowing this, but I don't know. But I think that it's really cool that Alexis based it in such a religious city from the Bible because of how it deals with religion. And I love that it really discusses genders in society and how women have been treated throughout history. And literally just having a mind of your own got you stuck on a pyre, burned to die, which is awful and terrifying. But guess what? If the church thinks you're a witch, you will still burn no matter what. So it doesn't really matter. I am going to read her other book. Her other book is House of Hunger, and it's apparently like a gothic vampire story. So I'm very excited to read that. I think that if you are looking for a new author to delve into her books, Alexis Henderson is that. And there are some epic scenes in this book that I wasn't sure if we were going to get, and we got them, and they were so good. And I'm really happy with the ending, and you have to read it. Oh, it's so hard for me not to do spoilers on this channel, guys, because I just want to tell you everything about a book I love. But because I love it so much, I want you to go read it. So please share this video with anyone that you think that would enjoy finding a new book like this to read, and leave a comment down below if you have read this. So I will see you all in the next video. Bye.